The gentleman explain his amendment, please.
The amendments delete 8B-12B and 8B-14 add in. Number 10, regulations or requirements adding protected classes not stipulated in state code.
Are there questions on the gentleman's amendment?
I'm sorry.
Page 5.
That would be page 5. We'd add that in at line 22.
And to the committee, any of these amendments in, staff will renumber those, so you don't have to worry about that.
Could you repeat that?
Yeah, what is it?
Repeat the language that you're adding.
The added language would be number 10, regulations or requirements added, protected classes not stipulated in state code.
Questions of the gentleman on his amendment? Gentleman from Marion.
What are you trying to do here? I'm a little confused about what
It's
you're.
based unification for employers, this unification bill.
Does it have anything to do with anti-discrimination laws?
I don't know, with anti-discrimination, it's just, I mean, we talked earlier about Kroger's and having the freedom to not sell bags or whatever types of things. This would do the same thing basically as we do for Kroger's.
Young lady from Fayette.
Just trying to clarify, what protected classes are not stipulated in the state code? If someone could elaborate, maybe?
Gentlemen, it's your amendment.
This would be just so there's not any created, not to create protected classes in this.
Oh, well, but what are the protected classes
Well, there
right
could be
now?
any. It's whatever you want to create. We're trying to prevent creation of.
Okay, which ones are already stipulated in the state code? Maybe I'd have to ask council that
We might-
question.
Yeah, 'cause I'm.
What are the protected classes in code already?
You're asking council now?
I guess, because he doesn't know, right?
No, I don't know.
Do we have to have a look?
Kip, I'm sure you know.
These are race, religion, age, nationality, port of origins.
Okay, say that again.
Yes.
Race,
Race,
religion,
religion.
nationality, age, I think that's sex, gender. I think those are disabilities. Disabilities.
And disabilities.
That's what's protected now?
That's protected now, correct?
Yes, ma'am, that's what's.
Okay.
Gentleman from Marion.
So Kip, would this amendment, if adopted, prevent a city from adopting an anti-discrimination clause such as sexual orientation?
It would.
It would.
Yes.
That's what I
And
thought.
further question.
Gentleman from Fayette.
Beckley just passed an anti-discrimination law. Would that nullify their law
It
to add
would.
that as a protected class?
Yes, to all the standards, there's a provision in this bill that vitiates all prior municipal rulings that are not in compliance with this code.
Gotcha, thank you.
Other gentleman from Marion. Or was your question answered?
It was answered.
Gentle lady from Mon.
Could the gentleman yield?
Yes, I do.
So this would allow for discrimination to come back, even though all these municipalities have passed these anti-discrimination bills, as council has just said.
No, my goal would be prevent discrimination.
To prevent discrimination by pushing it back for everybody who has a
Everybody be on the same
non-discrimination.
footing.
Sir,
For everybody to be on the same footing.
so
Not
what,
to protect anybody that's not protected by the state already.
so who's protected is race, religion, age, sex, and disabilities.
Right.
So when you wrote this amendment, who did you feel should not be protected?
I don't have anybody specifically at that point. It was not to go above and beyond what the state has already done.
Can you give me an example then?
Will not go any further than what the state's already done.
A specific example.
That's my specific example.
So for all the counties that has already passed a non-discrimination bill, this amendment would null and void that, correct?
If they're exceeding what the state has already set as their boundaries, yes.
So you want to push the state back instead of pushing it forward?
That's the judgment of how you feel about that.
And I think I have that judgment being a woman and a woman of color. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions?
I'd like to speak to the amendment, the lady referenced being a woman and a woman of color and has a disability.
Are there further questions on the amendment? Okay, discussion, gentleman from Mercer.
I want to encourage the lady that the two things she addressed is being a lady and a lady of color, as well as me being someone with a disability. All those are protected classes, I think, and I don't want to speak to who's giving the amendment, but the people that are already protected by the state, it's just left the same. It's just not broadening that class in any way, shape, or form. But with the classifications that council give, the two classifications she mentioned that she wanted covered are covered, and one that's particular to me, just having a severe disability, it's covered as well. And I hope that clears that up, and think it's a great amendment and just being pretty fair to people with disabilities, minorities, and grateful for it. Glad he clarified it, and hope if he's got anything further to add, it'd be good too.
Further discussion, gentleman from the mayor.
Yeah, I'd speak against the amendment, Mr. Chairman. I think this is a move to create more discrimination. I don't think that anyone should be denied housing because of their sexual orientation, or denied any right because of who they love or who they are or what they are. We have passed an ordinance in Fairmont. I don't live in the city, but Fairmont has passed an anti-discrimination ordinance that got extremely bloody. A lot of misinformation spread throughout the community that was just absolutely false. But I was proud of the residents of that community because they put it on the ballot and they passed that. And they say in Fairmont, we don't want to discriminate against anyone. We want to start moving forward. We don't want to move backward anymore. This moves us backwards, in my belief. It absolutely moves us backwards. And I would ask members to vote no on the gentleman's amendment, and I would ask for the yeas and nays as well.
Gentleman from Montague.
I would like to add to that the city of Morgantown recently passed a non-discrimination ordinance related to sexual orientation. And in addition to the reasons that the delegate from Marion County brought up, this is an economic development issue. This is why the Chamber of Commerce supports non-discrimination, because we're trying to attract employers to West Virginia and employees to come to West Virginia. And they expect us to not discriminate. And it's an issue that I think unified a lot of people in Morgantown, and I would hate to see us pass a law that makes that null and void. So I would also urge voting against the amendment.
The other gentleman from Marion.
It is 2019, and we are members of the House of Delegates, and we are getting ready to vote on an amendment that will allow discrimination in the state of West Virginia. How shameful is that? How shameful. The cities and towns across West Virginia have all passed ordinances that made sure sexual orientation was not a route to be discriminated against. And in many of those cities and towns, there were referendums, votes. In my hometown of Fairmont, there was a vote taken, and the vast majority of citizens voted to uphold that ordinance. I'm going to call for a roll call, because anyone that votes for this amendment, I want your names to be known statewide. This is the House of Delegates. We are better than this. And I can't believe we're even discussing this.
Gentleman from Mercer.
I want to say to the contrary to that is that I certainly believe that this is going to stop discrimination. It is not our job as legislators to legislate behavior. I've recently, now that I know exactly what some of my colleagues believe this amendment is, I wanted to say it was one of the most divisive issues I ever saw in Beckley, and I watched people rights be trampled over consistently to push a certain behavior. Now, it is true that to not pass this amendment would be discriminating against people that have either religious convictions or don't want to run their business the way a socialist left agenda wants us to run. I would definitely, now knowing the fact of the amendment, think it's one of the best things we can do. And being legislators, I think it is our job to make sure that we do protect citizens. If people want to go and behave however they want, and they're within the bounds of the law, they are certainly free to do that. They're free to do that now under the current discrimination laws that we have in the state of West Virginia. But you do not have a right to tell someone if they disagree with you for whatever reason, whether a code of conduct or religion, that they don't want to do business with you. They have the right to do that. They have the freedom in America to do that. And as legislators, I don't believe it is our job to legislate behavior. And I certainly think a roll call vote is great. I think it is wonderful that we would be known across the state as not being people that would try to implement our social views or our religious views and persecute other people because they don't agree with us. I think it is the point that why we should pass this amendment to ensure the fact that people are protected. People that own property, people that have businesses, if they want to operate a certain way and have unisex bathrooms, they can. But if they don't want to go to that expense, they don't have to. And that we don't put our people in harm's way because of a public safety issue. It is 2019. And I am grateful to be a part of this legislative body. I am grateful to vote for this amendment, to speak for this amendment, now that I'm clear as exactly what's been taking place and the reasons that things are being said here. I think what happened in Fairmont was a travesty. To walk over and to persecute people and tell them how they have to operate property they pay taxes on. That is our freedom in America. And I back the amendment. I want to thank them. I'm not 100% sure what delegate, where I can't see him, put the amendment in. And I don't know what the intent of the amendment was. But if it is to stop this nonsense that we are seeing in municipalities, and no counties do have this right now, and it's been voted down in a lot of municipalities. And I have personally stood against this twice because it is discrimination against the First Amendment and religious liberty. And the LGBT is the most socialist group in this country. They do not protect gays. There are many gays they persecute if they do not line up with their social ideology. Milo Yiannopoulos, completely different than how I live. He has a tour. And in UC Berkeley in California, the LGBT, now this is a homosexual man who by himself, now this was the name of his tour. This is not what I named his tour. But he was on what he referred to as the Dangerous Faggot Tour. And the LGBT stormed that building and did $200,000 worth of damage because he didn't line up with their political ideology, and he had to be escorted off the premises. And stories like this are all across our country. This is
Point of order. This is getting ridiculous. That's improper decorum in debate, and he's injecting his own personal opinion about a group, which is improper, Mr. Chairman. I ask you to rule him out of order.
I ask that it not be out of order, Mr. Chairman, because these are things that can be documented, seen, and truthful. They can be documented, seen, and truthful. I ask that their point of order be rejected, and I'll be allowed to continue.
Hang on a second. To the gentleman on point of order, your point is well taken, but at the same time, the rules of decorum cover the people in this room. He is speaking to people outside. Speaking of people outside of this room. To the member, I will ask you to tone it down.
Yes, sir.
And be very careful of how you tread on this.
Yes, sir.
The gentleman may continue.
Thank you. When we look and and I'm very passionate about this because I've seen so many people's rights violated over this order. I watched a city pretty much get divided over it. Whenever people already have these freedoms, to put these type of ordinances in place is to constrict freedom. And we saw this in this particular tour with Mr. Yiannopoulos, whenever this particular group of people, an organization that uses sexual behavior to promote a political ideology, had to be escorted off the property. He himself would identify as a homosexual male, and he is detested to the LGBT in these ordinances because they are violation of the First Amendment, religious liberty, and he could be sought over this. I wish he would come to Charleston so that it wouldn't be someone of a religious nature that is trying to tell these things of the socialist push and the forcible control of these type of ordinances. These are people that would identify in what those acronyms are. This man being a gay man that says these ordinances are unconstitutional. And we can't allow cities to have unconstitutional ordinances. And we already have enough protected classes. And to this amendment, it will stop this madness from happening, this division in our communities from happening, these divisions within our municipalities. And many of the people that come into those places and shop do not live within the city limits but live outside of them and are affected by that, or own businesses there and are affected by that. They may want to worship there. If the referendums aren't written in a certain way, discriminates against them. Yes to this amendment stops discrimination, does not promote it. And to any of my colleagues that felt it was unorderly, just due to my intensity and passion over watching people be discriminated against, I don't want to personally hurt you in any way, shape, or form. I mean you no harm whatsoever. I sit across from the delegate from the 50th, and we joke back and forth. We don't agree on things politically most of the time, but I don't want it to be personal. But whenever these type of ordinances are put in place, you discriminate and trample over top of people that don't want to live by those types of standards. If you want to live by those types of standards, live and let live. That's your business. That's your citizens' business. But if people don't, that's their business too. And to a lot of people, this has religious connotations to it. I would be one of them. There's people that just don't agree and want the freedom and don't want to spend all the money on restructuring bathrooms and all the other things it entails and all the things that have come along with these ordinances. But I don't want it to be that I'm personally attacking any group of people. It is simply to stop one group of people with a political ideology of telling everyone else how they have to live. And I don't want it to, when we leave here, I don't want to be upset or aggravated with anybody that speaks contrary to that. That's why we have debate. I understand clearly that I was within the order, and I want to respect the chairman's wishes. If my passion or tone is too intense, I'll back that off in a quick second. But this is something we must do in 2019 to stop people from being discriminated against that don't agree with one particular set of rules or ideology. Inclusion by definition is including people that are different than us. Inclusion does not mean that you set this exclusive set of rules and say you've got to live by them or else. That's the opposite of inclusion. Tolerance must tolerate the intolerant. If people do not tolerate the way you live or the way you do things, in the name of tolerance, we must allow them that same freedom. Otherwise, we become exclusive. We become discriminatory. We become bigoted. We become intolerant. And I just don't want that for the great state of West Virginia. If people agree with me and I want to fellowship with them and I want to spend time with them, that's great. If they disagree with me and they're within the bounds of the law and they want to live their lives, you know what? That's their life to live. We cannot forcefully coerce people into our ideology. My spiritual forefathers stood against that. That's why we don't have a state church in America. If you go into my office, you'll see why there is no state church in America today with the life of John Leland. And we cannot allow discriminatory bigots to determine how our citizens are going to live. I vote yes. I want everybody to vote yes.
Watch what you call people.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, he's not even discussing the bill or the amendment.
To the order, this is everything to do with the amendment.
To the gentleman, when we're doing a discussion, you bring in examples and stuff, which is what he's been doing. So I understand.
Yes, sir. That's what I'm trying to do, is just speak clearly to this amendment.
We have some other people who would like to speak, so if you're getting close to it.
Sure. I just want to thank you all for your time, and I will definitely be voting yes to this and encourage everyone here in the name of freedom and against discrimination to please vote yes to this amendment. Thank you.
Gentleman from Berkeley.
All I can say is I support the amendment. I can't say any more passionate than my colleague from Worcester.
Gentlelady from Montague. Oh, I'm sorry. I skipped it.
Yeah.
The gentleman from Brook, I apologize.
Thank you. I would speak against this right now because I am almost sick at my stomach. That is despicable. I think that behavior being talked about right now, this young lady's color of her skin is not behavior. That's not something that she chose to do. So I detest sitting here having haters talk about them being discriminated against.
Point of order.
Have a point for everyone. Thank you.
The gentlelady from Montague, I believe, is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the name of freedom, I sit before you as a mother of two kings that I almost died bringing to this earth. Both of my sons have disabilities. Because a piece of paper says they are protected, they are not. Because of the color of the skin, because my oldest son is gay, he should have the right to choose whomever he loves because he is a functioning citizen of West Virginia, of the great United States of America. I am a single mother. I was a widow at 28 years old. I worked 3 jobs. Yes, I've used the system. Yes, I've elevated my children. Yes, they know the right of right and wrong, and it is not behavior. What do you say to the child that is born with both sex organs? What do you tell the parents? This is a pushback. It is 2019. I am tired of fighting because of the color of their skin. I am tired of fighting because I don't have privilege. But my privilege before you today is to say no. No more. I am taking a stand for my son, for his friends. If WVU can have a non-discrimination ordinance, I worked hard to have the home I'm in 5 minutes away from the campus, and my son chose to live in a shitty apartment. Excuse my language, Mr. Chairman, because he was protected on that campus because he's gay. Well, we had a beautiful 4-bedroom home, and he was afraid to travel 5 minutes away, not to have his skull bashed in, because that's what a hate crime is. Not to have his testicles or his penis pulled off of him, because that's what a hate crime is. Not to be dragged behind a vehicle, because that's what a hate crime is. Not to have acid thrown in his face, because that's what a hate crime is. Not to have a noose wrapped around his dormitory door, because that's what a hate crime is. Not to have black paint, because that's what a hate crime is. Not to wear a white hood, because that's what discrimination is. And if you're telling me you okay, I am a woman of God. My mother is a minister. And I don't think it's funny. And it's not a laughing matter. I sit in this Capitol and I sacrifice. This is another third job for me. And I fear for my child because he's 2.5 hours away from me. And we have an ordinance in Morgantown. And I made it my business every Tuesday to be at the city council meetings, speaking for it. Because we have so many children that have nowhere to go. Because no one wants them. Because we label them. The stigmas. You call them butch. You call them faggots. You call them creatures. You call them a disgrace of God. You call them demons. You call them the devil. Well, guess what I call them? Love. Guess what I call them? Future leaders. Guess what I call them? Future doctors. Guess what I call them? Future advocates. Guess what I call them? Activists. But most importantly, I call him son. I speak in opposition of this amendment, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Young lady from Fayette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It has always fascinated me that everyone assumes that someone who's attracted to this member of the same sex is having outrageous sex 24 hours a day. I think there's a lot of celibate people who are attracted to members of the same sex. And when we talk about the Bible, it does say in the Bible that men should not have sex with men. But if you notice, it never mentions women with women. Also, why can't we discriminate against fornicators, adulterers, and anyone who practices the sin of Onan? If we're going to start with that, let's put all of the sexual sins right in there, and if we can find out that they're doing some of these things, then let's discriminate against them. All or none.
The gentleman from Mullen.
Would the gentleman from Mercer yield?
The gentleman yield.
Gladly.
The gentleman yields.
Is it two of the protected classes we have right now are disability and race? Is that true?
I'd have to refer to council, and but to your point, I think those both would be in those protected classes, but I think you would want to refer to council just for clarification.
Well, do you know when disability was added to the protected
I do not.
classes? Do you know when race was added?
I do not have the date in front of me.
Is it safe to say that there was some time in West Virginia's history when those were not protected
I would
classes?
have to check and see with the council. I will, just for the point of your argument, say sure.
Do you think it's okay to be fired from your job due to your disability?
If I cannot perform the functions of my job because my disability impairs that, but in and of myself to be fired from a disability is obviously not a reason to terminate employment. However, to that point, disability is not a behavior. Race is not a behavior. Being born a man or a woman is not a behavior. Who you sleep with is a behavior, and it is a choice that we make. And to the lady's point from Fayette, it's not a matter of whether people do that or don't do that. They should have the freedom to do that. If they don't want to keep company with fornicators, they don't have to. If they don't want to keep company with self-abusers, they don't have to. If they don't want to keep company with someone...
Gentlemen, I'm giving everybody here a lot of leeway.
Yes, you are.
Just be careful of...
Sure. I'm wanting to answer this question, Chairman.
I understand that. I think
He asked
one
questions.
example was probably enough.
Okay, very good. I think that people should have the freedom, if they engage in those behaviors, that's their business. If they want to abstain from any of those behaviors, they should have that freedom too. And, you know, to the point, I have 3 jobs. My favorite people in life are women. I have 2 children. I have a wife. And, you know, there's issues I'm sure I'm going to deal with coming through. But when it comes to the point of my color, my creed, born male or female, those are things that are not disputed, sir. But who you go and have relationships with or not is a choice. And I don't think there should be a protected class that. I don't believe it is discrimination if you disagree with people's lifestyle, that you want to do certain things or to separate certain ties if you pay the bills. So I hope that answers your question. I will be voting for this amendment to make sure that discrimination does not happen and bigotry does not happen to people because they want to be different. So I would speak for this amendment.
Do you think it's okay to,
To the gentleman, we are on discussion. I've given leeway to ask the gentleman to clarify his position. So if you would like to speak for the amendment or against the amendment, please do so.
I've already spoken against it.
Is there further discussion? The other gentleman from Monterey.
I want to speak against the amendment because I feel that it does discriminate. As I read it, it's going to prohibit adding non-protected classes to the law, prohibit towns and cities from adding classes that aren't already protected. Under current law, sexual orientation, lesbian, gay, transsexual, they're not protected classes under West Virginia law, and so it's discriminating against them. And so I urge a vote against the amendment.
Further discussion.
Mr. Speaker, just one more word.
Gentleman from Mary.
I'm trying to calm down here, and this makes me very angry as a West Virginian and as a human being. I just can't believe that, in my opinion, that we're discussing hate again in West Virginia, because that's the way I see this. Haters hate, and they want to continue to spread hate. I just can't believe in 2019 with this body, particularly the young new members of this body, that we're trying to prevent things like anti-discrimination ordinances to be enacted in communities. I mean, 1 minute we're talking about more local control. We want to give them local control. Unless it's something you don't like. Then you slam the door in their face again. We got to get beyond this. We all have different ideas of how to move West Virginia forward, and I'm fine with that. But spreading hate is not one thing that's going to move West Virginia forward. Fortune 500 companies have enacted anti-discrimination policies. You want them to come to West Virginia? They're not going to come if we keep passing crap like this. And that's what it is, it's crap. And I'm angry. I'm pissed off, Mr. Chairman. I've never thought I'd have to deal with something like this with this body. Let's vote no. Let's kill this amendment, and let's get on with life around West Virginia.
Further discussion. If not, question. Gentleman from Berkeley.
Yeah, I wish we'd get off the demagoguery. The gentleman's amendment specifically says, because I think we've forgotten what the amendment says, it says regulations or requirements adding protected classes not stipulated in the state code. That's all the amendment says. Whatever, And it's there for clarity so that we don't have some judge, some future time down the road, find a law or regulation that's not written in the law. This will clarify that. If you want to make a law, draft a bill, put one forward that will change the state law. But right now, we want to keep the communities from making laws that are counter or not, that are not state laws. And there's nothing to prevent a company from coming in here, and if they want to have gay bathrooms or LGBT bathrooms, they can do that. There's nothing preventing them from doing what they want to do. We're not going to put a state, we want the local regulations to stipulate that they're going to make regulations that are within state law. And I support you. I see nothing hateful about it.
Further discussion. Question will be on the gentleman's motion. Does the gentleman wish to close?
Yes.
Gentleman may proceed.
I am baffled by what I've heard. The directions we went with this, simply an amendment, regulations or requirements adding protected classes not stipulated in state code. Not to take rights away from any protected class. Didn't say that anywhere in the amendment. That's not the goal. It's not to discriminate against anybody. It's to protect those that may be discriminated against. Forcing somebody to compromise their values is discrimination.
Yes.
That's what we're talking about. Earlier today, we talked about the rights of Krogers and businesses and municipalities, whether they could have plastic bags or not. Plastic bags, people, not values, not morals, plastic bags. And you're arguing now about somebody's morals, of what they believe, what they hold dear. You want to force on them to accept something they don't. But plastic bags, that's a whole different story. Folks, the amendment, again, regulations or requirements adding protected classes not stipulated in state code. That's all it does. It's not discriminating against anybody. It's protecting everyone. Everyone in this great state of West Virginia. Everybody. Every single person. I'll close, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. Question before us is on the gentleman's motion. The yeas and nays have been demanded. Is the demand sustained? The demand is sustained. All those in favor will state their, when the clerk will call the roll, all those in favor will state yea or nay.
Vice Chairman Pack?
Aye.
Delegate Angelucci?
No.
Delegate Asinger?
Yay.
Delegate Fibby?
Yay.
Delegate Cadle?
Yes.
Delegate Caputo?
No.
Delegate Casario?
No.
Delegate Hanson?
No.
Delegate Hicks? Delegate Hott?
Yes.
Delegate Jeffries D?
Yes.
Delegate Jeffries J?
No.
Delegate Martin?
Yes.
Delegate Nelson?
No.
Delegate Painter?
No.
Delegate Phillips?
Yes.
Delegate Porterfield?
Yes.
Delegate Piles?
No.
Delegate Staggers?
No.
Delegate Swartzmiller?
No.
Delegate Seifholt? Delegate Tomlin?
No.
Delegate Walker?
No.
Delegate Worrell?
There being 10 yeas, 12 nays, the amendment fails.